two people who are leaders in their fields as well as participating artists. They have used their experience and skills to create theater that reaches out to every age group. We'll see the ways scene design and technology work together with choreography, and we'll see how their work enriches not only their own lives, but the lives of our community. On this edition of Art Now, we'll look at the work of Tom and Jean Korder, along with an exclusive interview with J.W. Morrissette.
Hi, welcome to Art Now, a program where we talk to artists whose work is part of our community. I'm Greg Chu, and I'll be your host. Our guests today are Tom and Jean Korder. Tom started out in Minnesota and holds degrees from Southern Methodist University and the University of Minnesota. Since 1989, he has been the technical director at the Krannert Center for the Performing Arts and serves as chair of the Department of Theater Scenic Technology program and as acting chair of the Scene Design program. Tom has worked for a variety of performing arts organizations, including Fort Worth Ballet, TW Designs, a commercial production company, and Shakespeare Festival of Dallas. His academic career since 1984 has included teaching lighting and technology at universities in Pennsylvania, Indiana, and Illinois. He is very active with the United States Institute for Theater Technology, where he has served in various elected positions on both the regional and national levels. He was selected to receive the Midwest Section Founders Award in 2006. Jean Ray Korder has choreographed productions for the Public Opera of Dallas, Texas, Classic Theater Works in Atlanta, Georgia, Allentown College in Pennsylvania, Evansville Dance Theater and University of Evansville Theater in Indiana, the Illinois Opera Theater, University of Illinois Theater, and Parkland College Theater. She holds an MFA in dance. Performance choreography from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, and an advanced certificate from the University of Illinois in educational operations and leadership. She is currently Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment for Urbana School District 116 and very much involved working with the designers, directors, students, and volunteers here at Parkland College. Let's start at the beginning. Jean, how did you first get interested in dance?
Well, you know, back when I was learning to walk, actually, and one thing led to another. In my very, very small town in Missouri, the local dance instructor saw me one day performing as part of the Jamboree Parade in a square dance group and said to my mother, "You should put her in dance class." And at that time, her son needed some reading instruction, so my mom and my dance instructor traded services, so to speak, and then the rest is just kind of history. When I got to college, I really wanted to pursue dance in some way, but my mother, being the smart, frugal woman that she was, said, "Really, dear, you need something that you can count on. Get your teaching degree." But fortunately at Southwest Missouri State, we were able to pursue both a bachelor's in education and a degree in dance and theater at the same time.
Well, Jean has had a huge influence on the arts for the Urbana School District, so we're very fortunate that she was able to convince her mother. Okay, Tom, please tell us about your early experiences with scene design and technology.
Sure. Well, you know, it was in high school where the drama teacher decided she needed more male cast members, so my first introduction to theater was standing at the door of a courtroom, no lines, but so I started out as an actor and had a few acting roles. But then as I worked on those productions, I discovered that I really enjoyed all of the work with scenery and lighting. My father was a carpenter, so I think some of that rubbed off on me too. So, and then as I was looking at, wasn't really thinking about college too much, but there was a college in town that was an all-girls school, but they also had a few men attending as well, so they offered me a scholarship, and I kind of Went there thinking I was going to be an actor, but I ended up doing more technical work really in the end, so that kind of was the start of it.
Oh, that's great. So that's how you caught the bug.
Yeah.
Well, you both have found a way to join your avocation and your vocation. Let's take a look at some photos from Parkland's recent production of Sarah Ruhl's play Dead Man's Cell Phone and productions of Frozen and Duck Hunter Shoots Angel. Tom, you did the scenic and lighting design for this excellent production last November. How do you bring the audience into the world of the play?
Well, that was actually a production that I think kind of was a real culmination of me starting to bring scenery and lighting together, and I think that I've grown a lot as a scene designer. I haven't been doing a lot of that, but Tom Schnarry, the director on it, and I had conversations early on, and he had a few inspirations as far as you know, what were some artworks that were affecting him, and so we started looking at Edward Hopper, the painter. And as I started to look at his work, one of his most famous is Nighthawks. I think a lot of people know that work. But as I started looking at his work, I started getting this idea of, well, maybe I could help set the scene, each of the scenes, by using Edward Hopper paintings as a background for the audience, you know, as a way to help the audience understand, oh, we are now at a bar, a hotel bar. So that's where we kind of started. And we kind of just went off from there. We started with the Edward Hopper. Some of the other inspiration in the scenic design is actually coming off of Mondrian, another painter in that same time. And then I also, with the furniture, also looked at furniture makers, designers of the time, and tried to incorporate some of their work into that too. So it's kind of a period piece, but in the end, I don't think you really think, oh, it's set in that period. I think it gave the right environment for the show.
Yeah, it was a very striking look. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Gene, we have some photos from two productions produced by the Illinois Department of Theater, Mary Zimmerman's Metamorphoses and Leonard Bernstein's Candide. What were the challenges you found working in those productions?
Well, for Candide, probably the biggest challenge was it was about the fourth or fifth Candide I had done. And trying to keep the Candide separate in my mind and work with the director and the musical staff to make a new vision of, and not be influenced too much by past casts and past experiences. That was a huge challenge. We also had a bigger cast for that production than I typically had used in the past, so we had a very large cast on a very small stage in a very small working space, and trying to move all those people around in one fell swoop oftentimes created some challenges for us. In Metamorphoses, I was really, really lucky to work with an old friend from graduate school, Renee Moreno from SMU. We hadn't seen each other or worked together in over 30 years, but getting back together with him and having a common movement vocabulary and a common movement background, because at SMU the theater and the dance programs were very tightly related. So we had a history together and a movement vocabulary. First thing we had to do was to teach these very new actors about a movement vocabulary, because they did not have one in common. So first challenge was trying to create a sense of who we were as a cast and how we moved together, and called on a lot of my old Graham training to do that. And then the other challenge in Metamorphosis really was the water, and trying to factor in 4,000, was it 4,000 gallons?
Yes, 4,000 gallons.
What 4,000 gallons of water really means to a production, and what we practice on dry land is not always possible when you have the resistance of the water and the slipperiness of the water. You know, all of the nuances that the water added to the production were sometimes happy discoveries, and other times it was, oh my goodness. So.
Well, you can add that to W.C. Fields' Animals and Kids.
Yeah. Animals, Kids, and
Stay
Water.
Away from water, right. Thanks, Gene. Tom, your work with your students was on display in those productions. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. As part of my job at the University of Illinois, I'm back now chairing the Scenic Technology program, which is the program that trains the technical directors who work on productions. So in both of those cases, graduate students that are in our program were the technical directors for that. So as advisors, we work closely with them. We kind of just stand a little bit behind and to the side and keep an eye on them and help try to stay out of their way, but at the same time, when we feel the need, we try to guide them in the right way and help them make better decisions. The water, in the case of Metamorphosis, was certainly one of those where young TD, that was a big challenge, and so I think probably some of us were a little more involved maybe in that case to try to make sure that what we were going to provide for the actors was going to be safe and was going to be a workable solution. There was a lot of research and investigation into that, of how to keep the water warm enough, how to keep the water clean and sanitary for them, and also how to get the water in and get it out and not have it go everywhere.
Well, part of the fun of doing tech is the challenges you run into along the way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, let's go back and talk about the two of you as a working pair. When did you first share a production with Jean?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. When two of us, one talks, usually it's me. No, actually in grad school, we actually met doing Matchmaker, which is kind of corny and hokey, but we did, and sad but true. But our first show together was History of American Film, and then Romeo and Juliet, I think, is our grad school productions. And then
Romeo and Juliet was the first time I actually, got to design
Yeah.
As a student, and Jean choreographed, helped in movement in that show, right? With the person kind of ended up being a strong mentor to both of us, I think, Dale A.J. Rose, who went on to Missouri Rep and was the artistic director there, so.
Oh, well, that's great. On the local scene, when you enter the lobby here at Parkland Theater, you see many photos of past productions. And I understand, Tom, that about 25% of those photos are shows that you have worked on as scene designer or lighting designer or both. What do you like about working here on the Parkland stage?
Well, I think the nice thing, first off, I don't get much chance to design at Krannert. My job there primarily is education and the technology side, the technical direction side. So out here I get a bit of a creative release for what I was actually trained for. When we met, I was a lighting design student. So I get a bit of that creative outlet here. And then it's just a different environment here. At Krannert, we tend to have a pretty tight environment because we do a lot of productions to make all of that work and keep all of that going and train all of the undergraduates and graduates we're doing. We keep things pretty tight. Over here, it's a bit more laid back, it's a different atmosphere, and to me it's just a nice change. The students here, it's kind of nice to come back to, when we first started teaching, we started at small schools. And there we had relationship with students that were very close, very immediate. And at the graduate level, it's a little different. So it's kind of coming back here, it's coming back to, I mean, as a matter of fact, some of the students from our first job in Pennsylvania, we still are in touch with. Yeah, they've gone on to do great things. One of them who was, what is Jen's last name now? Hewitt, Jen Lamb Hewitt, who's now a stunt woman. She was in the Stunt Woman in True Grit recently, so.
Oh, terrific, yeah. Well, we have some photos of Nonsense, which you both worked together on here at Parkland. And while those are running, Jean, how is the experience of working together on productions for you? Do you take the show home with you, or is it something you need to avoid?
I really try to keep all my lives separate. When we work here, we work very much in parallel universes. With the occasional, when we get to the production stage, when we get to the end, there's a lot of give and take. But during the setup, during the rehearsal period, we're pretty much moving in parallel ways. There's not much need to take things home.
Except on this show, I think one of the first times you came home and you
Except
gave me a list.
Oh no, no, it's okay. Okay, so I back that up. We don't take it home and talk about it. I take it home and demand. You know, like, okay, she needs a table that we can stand on. Got that? You know, so there are some things that as I'm working through the choreography, because he's right there, and I don't have to leave a note, I just, you know, okay, we need to stand on the table, it needs to tip over, and we would love for the doctor's table to roll, please.
I have to write on the table too, you forgot about that part.
stand on the table, right on the table, and it rolls.
Well, certainly, you know, over the shows I've done, I've noticed that it's important to keep things right at home. My wife often notices bits of furniture that have disappeared for 9 weeks at a time. So
Just little things, yeah.
we used to have a dining room table, didn't we, dear? Yeah. Well, thank you. Tom will look at some photos and a design sketch and rendering from 5 Kinds of Silence here at Parkland. And tell us a little bit about the lighting that we see in these photos.
Sure, that was, well, whenever I work with Randy Hard from here at Parkland, she has always pushed me creatively, and it's always, what I've discovered is I always do better work, it seems like, working with her. She asked me to look at things in a different way. She asked me not to kind of avoid going back to the same old thing, and I think what you see in 5 Kinds of Silence, that in the lighting especially, it wasn't about can you see their face, it wasn't about you know, a specific kind of, well, this is the living room or this is the dining room. It was more about what is the atmosphere we're creating. And with that piece and the one recently, the one we just completed, Frozen, which was again another challenging topic to work on, I think we created some really beautiful moments in that, and so it was really exciting to work on.
Well, the photos are very striking, so it must have been a very visually effective show. Well, I think I'm going to turn now to the current production you're involved with, the children's musical, Pinkalicious. I'm pleased to introduce J.W. Morrissette, who is chair of the Theater Studies program at the University of Illinois. He has taught and directed with the Summer Theater Department at Interlochen Center for the Arts, as well as directing and teaching at Parkland College. J.W. is also the director of Pinkalicious, the musical. I had the pleasure of sitting in on a rehearsal last week, J.W., and this really looks like a show that will be a lot of fun for the performers and the audience. Can you tell us a little bit about the production?
Oh, sure, absolutely. It will be a lot of fun, both for the performers and mostly for the audience, of course. Pinkalicious, the musical, is based on a very popular series of children's books by the same name, Pinkalicious. There's also Purplelicious and Goldalicious, and I'm missing Silverlicious, if I remember correctly, right? Yeah. I am the father of an 8-year-old and 6-year-old, 2 girls who absolutely adore this series, and this is a chance for us to take that book, bring it to a musical treatment on stage through the live theater, and see the story of what happens when a little girl who loves the color pink has too much color pink and actually ends up turning pink herself, which she thinks is a dream come true, but it turns out that things aren't all perfectly in the pink, I guess is the way to say it, that there are still some challenges. She doesn't want to remain pink. So we see that journey told through this story.
Well, it looks like a lot of fun. J.W., tell us about the give and take of the director, the tech director, and the choreographer. Are there 3 visions that have to become one, or is it a more organic process of evolving together?
I think there's an absolutely organic process, depending on who you're working with. If you have a team of people that have worked together and have developed a kind of common language around how they see things and have a work habit and relationship together, and also it's based on kind of mutual respect for each other's specific area, be it the physical world of the play, or how that world is lit, or how that world is lived in through dance, or how the music also fills that space as we communicate with each other. And we've been able to do that over many years. We have a great relationship. So for us, it's very organic. There really isn't this is the vision, you must follow this through, or we cannot do this. It's as a director, because of my relationship with both Tom and Jean, I can turn to them and say, what can we do? And they're the ones who get to tell me where we finally have pushed too far and it's no longer possible. So it's a fun, organic process that way, but again, it's based on those relationships.
Well, it was really clear during the rehearsal, the pretty seamless interaction between all the directors with the students and performers. It's not only students, but it's also some of our community people as well.
Absolutely.
Jean, how do you approach each song as a choreographer in Pinkalicious? And how does the dance help us learn about each character? And feel free to give us some examples.
Tough question, but every song is different. Every musical is different. Everything we do, I approach differently depending on the musical and depending on who I'm working with. We've worked together for several productions now,
Yeah.
and I think we're hitting our stride. That sometimes I can read JW's mind, and very often he reads mine and
Yes.
jumps in. And I like to, I'm a big stroke person. I like to do the broad strokes first, and he really gets in and takes those broad strokes and finds just the nuances and the little details and takes a big idea and makes it much, much better, and really helps define the characters after I've kind of mucked with the music and the movement. And it's about telling the story and making sure that, because in no other world do we ever stop and break into song and dance. We just don't do that. So it's trying to figure out how that music and how that number moves the story from where you are when we start to where it is when we finish, and how the characters sometimes grow and change in the process, and sometimes how they don't. Specific examples, do you want to jump in with any?
I think one of the fun things that Jean does incredibly well is that, I always think about it this way: if I turned off the music and I couldn't hear anything happening right now, but I was still watching them dance, now I know that seems like an absurd picture to think about, but would I still get the story? And that interpretive level of dance, it always comes through, and it's always a good fun time, that by the end of the song, we started in one place at the beginning of the song, and the story progresses, and movement is a big interpretation of that progression of the story. Jean does that wonderfully. When we think about something like, we've been working on Pinkalicious right now, so something about the journey that Pinkalicious takes from the beginning of the very beginning number in the show, where she just wants to eat pink cupcakes, and by the end of it she's had so many she's on a sugar high and she's bouncing all over the place, and Jean's choreography has captured that so that the story builds physically as well as musically, as well as through the text and the actors' work. The actors wouldn't be able to create that without the specific movement that Jean's been able to bring to the table in terms of choreography.
Yeah, and children's theater or for adults, it sounds like you're being very true to the characters to.
Well, I think children need. It doesn't really matter to me whether it's specifically a children's audience or or a different kind of audience. That children need a good theatrical experience regardless of their age, and telling the story is really what we try to do. And I have sometimes in my head 4 or 5 versions of the same song, and that way we get to work with the cast and let them contribute and let them shape the movement overall and pick what works best for them, because what I can do as a dancer is not often or always what the cast members can do, but trying to find that balance between what is it that they know as a character and how is the movement shaped by their character, and what their character is doing is always some part of the challenge and what we try to get at every day.
Yeah, do you find they take more ownership of the role because of that?
Yeah, it's not like putting on a coat. If we can get them to own the movement, whether it comes from them or whether it's a stylization of something that I've originally thought of, once they own it, they'll remember it. But as long as they're always trying to put my movement on top of their bodies, then we struggle with that memorization thing. So we try in this shortened rehearsal space to find as much movement that comes from the actor as we can within the confines of the outline that I've sketched.
Yeah, well, what a great experience for the cast, and shows a lot of respect for your audience too. That's terrific. Tom, should we expect a lot of pink in this production? Well, what do you look for when you light a children's production?
Sure. Well, the boss over here said he's not the boss in the bad way as some directors I've had.
Oh, I am.
Yeah.
We haven't entered our tech phase.
Yeah.
That's when I'll turn.
You can play that role just fine, yes. But I think there was, I can't remember the exact expression, but I suspect you will see a good amount of pink, and probably especially towards the end, but they'll have to come see how well I do with that. But lighting, when we teach lighting, we talk about, kind of common things that we're trying to do. You obviously have to see the performers. You're trying to set some type of mood. You may be trying to set some realistic elements, like sunlight or that type of thing. And then also, my training also emphasized a lot of composition. So where you're looking at the picture on stage and you're helping the audience focus in certain areas to help them, with the story, or you're just trying to create a picture that is beautiful and composed in a certain way. Generally with this type of production, visibility is a big thing. You know, obviously it's the old adage of you can't see their face, you can't hear them. Especially with comedy, there's a lot of people who believe that to be very true. So that visibility will be a big thing. Mood will be a big element here too, I think, to try to help, especially we go into a couple sequences of Dreamland for Pinkalicious, so there will be a lot of mood there, I think. Less realistic elements, I think, with this production, though. It's less about that. So.
Well, I'll leave my rose-colored glasses at home,
Yeah.
it sounds like. Finally, we have the cast of Pinkalicious performing a song from the show, which opens on February 22nd. What can you tell us about this number?
It's the march. In my head, I think of this one as the march.
All
This is really just Pinkalicious being Pinkalicious and being her exuberant self and sucking everybody else in the family into the march and kind of setting the stage for everything that's to come.
Yes, it's the first number in which we meet all of the Pinkertons. The family is together as she is literally trying, you know, as sometimes children are wont to do, manipulate to try to get an extra couple of pieces of dessert and cupcakes, and she is achieving that goal through this number, if I remember correctly.
All right, well, very good. We'll see the march.
1, 2, 3, pretty sing along with me, Pinkaroo, Pinkaroo, like some Pinkaroo dream come true. Tell Pinkaroo, Pinkaroo, delicious and positively perfect. Pinkaroo,
Once again, Pinkalicious the musical opens at Parkland on February 22nd and runs through March 10th. It features a cast of campus and community members, including one of my former students, Ellen Fred. I'm very proud of Ellen. I believe there are pink cupcakes to be shared in the lobby with the actors after the performance. Very good. Well, that's our show. Thanks for watching Art Now. Our guests have been Jean and Tom Korder and J.W. Morrissette, respectively, the choreographer, scene and lighting designer, and director of Pinkalicious, the musical, right here at Parkland College. You can learn more about the production at the website theatre.parkland.edu. We hope you have enjoyed today's show, and we hope it will inspire you to explore the local art scene and to make your own art now.